All right, I'm going to call to order the Plan Commission meeting at 6:41. First up is approval of minutes for March 17th.
Second.
All right, any changes at all? Seeing none, all in favor of approving, say aye. 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 Any opposed, nay. All right, those are approved. I don't have anything for public appearances for non-agenda items. So I'll leave that as is. Agenda reviews or anything we need to change? All right. Looks like we're good on agenda review, so we'll just go to the first item here. Item A is the ECS WM permit. Do we have someone here? Do you want to speak to it?
Do we have Brian?
Oh, all right. Brian, you want to come up and just kind of explain the permit, what's going on, maybe quick for us? Come up to one of these mics. Either one of these mics up here is great.
We just got approval. This is Frank here too. He's a contractor from Integrity. We just ended up getting approval from the DNR on Friday for this project. I've been working with Elliot from Dane County to make sure that all the plans and everything are put in place. The one thing I would like to address with
Can you sit down just so that the picks you up better? We got one person online. I want to make sure you can hear you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The one thing that I would like to address that came up with Frank is the trucks entering and leaving the site. There is a median on McGee Road. It was requested that this was just going to be removed. This portion of PD is going to be reconstructed anyways, so with the traffic control that the contractor can put in place to safer allow trucks to exit and enter the site. But the existing site, currently all sheet drains to the east. We're not changing any of the drain patterns that are leaving the site. We're not changing anything off the site, as all of the stormwater goes to, I think it's Dolly Park. That's there. So it's a fill site for the construction for the PD and Fish Hatchery Road that'll be next year. The USLE calculations that I had to do for the stormwater they're not designed for fill sites, being that they typically, the erosion for this particular site needs to be done as the fill comes in. Most of the sites, usually it's the worst case scenario for the worst case of the erosion. In this case, we don't obviously want to have bare ground for a long time. So as the contractor establishes his grade, then the whole entire site will be E-matted, or at least the slopes will be E-matted, and then we will mulch the top for a native seed.
All right. Good. Sonia, you want to do a staff report before I read some citizen comments?
I will bring up the site plan here so we can see an aerial as well. All right, so this application is for an erosion control permit or a land disturbing activity. When the parcel is over 5 acres in size, this requires Plan Commission approval, so that's why it's before you tonight. The parcel is located north of McKee Road. It's in between the Badger State Trail and the Dolly Park Conservancy area. Shown up here on the image, it's this long and narrow outlet that goes parallel here to the Badger State Trail. The parcel itself is about 18 acres in size, and the area of land disturbance is outlined in the red hatching on the northern portion of the parcel. That encompasses about 11 acres of the outlet. To the south here, we have the Pine Ridge Subdivision, and over to the west are the rest of the Thermo Fisher land holdings, Spoke and Sprocket Drive, and again, the convergence of the bike paths in this area and the Pond and Dolly Park Conservancy over here to the east. A lot of neighborhood residents submitted some comments of concern that touched on different topics, so I just want to run through those quickly. They were about the topics of noise, traffic, aesthetics, and how the sort of stabilization and slopes and grades would look after the fill is complete, stormwater hours of operation, overnight crushing, and things like that. And before I go into all of those comments, I'll also show this phasing plan. In total, the fill to be brought into this site would amount to 100,000 cubic yards of fill. It would be coming from two different City of Fitchburg road construction projects. First, the McKee Road reconstruction, and then second, the Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction. Phase 1 and 2 would happen on the farthest north end of the parcel, and the amounts are approximately 30 to 40,000 cubic yards for each phase. Phase 1 and 2 would come from the McKee Road project, and Phase 3 would come from the Fish Hatchery Road project. So again, going through those issues, first, the hours of operation. The applicant stated that no overnight work would be done, and that the work would be limited to standard city construction hours. So in the staff recommendation, which is for approval, we've also limited that by saying that construction may not occur outside of the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we also specifically noted that overnight trucking or crushing would be prohibited. Second, because hours would not extend beyond 6 p.m., the applicant has also stated that lighting would not be required. We've also limited the approval accordingly, with site lighting being prohibited on site. Third, we provided review comments to the applicant regarding the impact on the bike path aesthetically, and in their response, they explained that the first 40 feet east of the Badger State Trail would not be disturbed. After that, the grade would start to go up, forming an embankment of about 8 to 10 feet in height, and that would not exceed a slope of 3 to 1, and that area would be seeded with native prairie grass. Regarding compaction, we wanted to make sure that the fill being brought in would be appropriate for future development, and the application proposes that they have an agreement with the landowner, Thermo Fisher, and that the fill that's being brought in would be limited to soil, sand, and rock, and that it would preclude construction waste, as well as hydric soils. And then finally, regarding stormwater, there were a lot of resident concerns there. Public Works has reviewed this in detail and has recommended approval, and they've also consulted with other agencies, Dane County, as well as City of Madison. There were a couple of accommodations from the applicant made to address the stormwater concern. First, they added a lot of native prairie seeding. With the deeper roots, it allows for greater infiltration and reducing the concern about runoff there due to the removal of the trees. Second, they added some temporary erosion control measures, including a basin. I don't know exactly where it is here on the site, but if we have questions, maybe the applicant can get into that. And then it also reviewed specifically the drainage patterns. Like the applicant stated, the existing pattern goes east this way to the park where it eventually discharges. So in the proposed and final grading outcome, the flow would still continue to go to the east. And in the areas where there's the new western slope, it would drain to the west, but then meet a ditch where it would be conveyed around and then still go to the east. There were also some comments regarding the removal of the trees and whether any study was done in terms of the quality or whether those trees should be protected. There is no ordinance or policy that I have to require that, and the applicant did address that comment as well, saying that they didn't study it specifically due to this property being north of the residential site. Otherwise, perhaps more study would have been done there to consider what trees to save behind the residential properties. So all in all, the staff recommendation is for approval as listed in the staff report, and there are 7 recommended conditions that address the things that we just went through.
And I know that in this area, we're also looking at the Capital City Trail and doing a study with both the City of Madison and I believe the county as well to figure out what improvements can be done in that area in general, because that area in general, nothing necessarily to do with this site, has a lot of water issues, and so I know we're looking at ways to improve that already, and this, from what I hear, this isn't going to make those things worse, but it's a bad situation. I do have some comments from the public that I want to read before we get into discussion. First up is from Dorothy Krause, who lives here in Fitchburg and is on the council. Dear Planning Commission members, looking over tonight's agenda, I am dismayed not to see better representation of the resident comments for your consideration. We did the Arrowhead redevelopment plan in 2012, with the largest portion being the Thermal Fish property. The Pine Ridge neighborhood residents were heavily involved. Knowing they would be concerned about this proposal, I asked for their thoughts when the comment form came to me. I didn't quite expect the deluge of comments that followed, more or less summed up in Matt's comments and email exchanges below. For myself, my greater concern is what happens with stormwater. The mountain bike trails and the Capital City Trail already have stormwater issues, especially given that water from the site must cross them to get where it's going. Whatever happens, I'm hoping that the Plan Commission makes sure that guarantees are in place that will mitigate stormwater impacts for a number of years into the future as needed. Also attached my comment sheet as well as cut and paste my comments from here. I have significant questions and concerns about stormwater impacts related to surrounding bicycle facilities in an area where there are already water issues. There is no way that this project can go forward without a stormwater study to answer many questions and concerns. Given the number of trees that will be removed, how much stormwater are those trees currently absorbing, and will that volume be replaced on site, or will water in excess of the ability of grass to absorb simply run off, following the path of least resistance, and to where? The mountain bike trails and the Capital City Trail immediately adjacent already have problems with stormwater runoff, to a point that the mountain bikes trails end up being shut down and biking groups post notices of wet, icy, unsafe conditions on the Capital City Trail. This project must maintain the status quo of those trails, if not improve it. Someone looked at the actual trees to determine whether there are trees of value to protect and save. I understand that any in the middle would be lost regardless of value, but there are some in the perimeter of the site that could be preserved. Also, questions issues about interactions with the Pine Ridge neighborhood related to hours of operation, noise, and lighting that may be used. A number of resident comments have already been submitted to the city. I'd ask that those be officially included for consideration. Generally, I want more information about fill content, how compaction will occur, and future anticipated use. I've heard that there was consideration of a solar field, which ultimately I think the neighborhood would support, but all the above questions and concerns need to be addressed before it would potentially be possible. Thanks to all of you for your service to the city. All right, next, dear State of Fitchburg, on behalf of Pine Ridge Association, I'd like to voice a concern with approval of the ECSWM approval for this project, the fill site. Proposal outlines 3 phases. Phase 1, material coming from existing county highway PD project that will be placed from mid-April to end of August of 2020. Phase 2, material coming from new construction highway PD project that will be placed from August to November of 2020. Phase 3, material from the Fish Hatchery project that will be placed next year in 2021 when that project starts, which isn't true, it actually starts this year. While we acknowledge that the proximity of Phase 1 and Phase 2 McKee Road County Road PD projects makes the use of the thermal fill site an attractive option, myself and other neighbors have already raised various concerns with Lisa, Dorothy, and others that have already been documented. Response to question number 10, were other site alternatives considered? The applicant responded, this site is the closest available to both projects that can accept this fill. Excuse me. This limits the amount of trucking needed, which in turn eliminates excess use of fossil fuels and emissions. There are various other sites that are much farther from this project that would be capable of accepting some of this excess soil, but none that can receive all the excess soil from these projects. Discussion between the contractor and the property owner about this site has been ongoing since early 2019. Without the site being a factor, the cost of these projects would have been substantially higher. We'd like to raise 2 additional concerns regarding to the justification or using this thermofill site as the dumping ground for the Fish Hatchery Road project, proximity and timeline. Proximity, the McKee Road reconstruction project encompasses Seminole Highway to Commerce Park Drive, and the access proximity of the thermofill site is immediately accessible within this zone. However, the McKee Road Fish Hatchery Road intersection is over 2 miles east of Seminole Highway and over 3 miles away from the access point to this thermofill site. Furthermore, most of the proposed Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction project extends north of the McKee Road, and some of this is not actually city of Fitchburg, which isn't true either. The above response adequately justified the use of the thermofill site for the McKee Road County PD projects. However, this is not an acceptable justification for the use of the thermofill site for the Fish Hatchery Road project. There are very likely other fill sites that can be considered along Fish Hatchery Road for the Fish Hatchery reconstruction project instead of the thermofill site that are closer or equidistant. Timeline. One primary reason for raising this concern is the proposed timeline of the Fish Hatchery Road project relative to the McKee Road project. Phase 1 and 2 projects from McKee Road County PD wrap up by November 2020, according to the proposal. However, the request for Phase 3 utilization of the thermofill site extends into 2021 and only vaguely describes this timeline. Very likely, this project will extend into late 2021. Therefore, this will request utilization of the thermofill site for at least a year beyond the completion of the McKee Road reconstruction project. Residents of the Pine Ridge neighborhood will have been annoyed and inconvenienced by the McKee Road reconstruction project utilization of the thermofill site for over 6 months by the time this project ends. Approval of use of this thermofill site for the Fish Hatchery Road project will extend this nuisance threefold, extend for about 12 months beyond the timeline of the McKee Road project. The incompatible timelines of the McKee Road versus Fish Hatchery Road project makes the use of the thermofill site beyond November 2020 unacceptable. Based on these proximity and timeline concerns, we strongly urge the city of Fitchburg to not approve the use of the thermofill site for the Phase 3 Fish Hatchery Road project. We strongly urge the city of Fitchburg to demand the applicant show their research what other fill sites they have considered using for the Phase 3 Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction project prior to considering approval of the thermal fill site for this project. Thank you, Matthew Flowers, from the president of the Pine Ridge Neighborhood Association. Excuse me. All right, and this is from Deb New, who lives in that Pine Ridge neighborhood as well. To whom it may concern, I was just made aware of the Pine Ridge Association today, April 2nd, that there is a proposed construction debris dump site that will be adjacent to our neighborhood and Dunn's Marsh Conservancy. As a homeowner in the Pine Ridge neighborhood and one whose home backs up directly to the Conservancy, I'm writing this email with a very heavy heart. I emphatically declare my disapproval or acceptance of this proposal. The idea of transporting construction debris adjacent to our homes throughout the duration of the McKee and the Fish Hatchery Road project is unthinkable and unacceptable. We as a neighborhood were introduced to a fill site early on in the Verona Road reconstruction project that was also located on one of Thermo Fisher's extra lots. Our introduction to the fact this plan was approved by the city as a debris site was by being abruptly awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of concrete crushing machines, heavy equipment, and blinding floodlights. After reaching out immediately to our council representative, they restricted their use of that land and its operation for debris. Somehow it seems we are facing the same situation again. This time will definitely impact not only those who back up to the Conservancy, but those who live on the west side of the neighborhood who experience dump trucks coming and going adjacent to the Badger Ridge bike path on the access road, which it appears they intend to build. My deep concern about this project is not only the noise, potential floodlights, and debris dumping that will occur, but the site will require clearing land that is heavily wooden and parallel to the beautiful Badger Ridge bike path, as well as the new Capital City off-road bike trail. Please note, they actually have already downed trees and made their access road since I had originally wrote and presented this complaint, which is so disturbing and disheartening. I truly do not understand how this parcel of land can be considered for such a project. I adamantly disagree with all plans to proceed with this proposal for our neighborhood and those who will be directly and indirectly affected by this debris removal project. Sincerely, Deborah New. She lives in Fitchburg here as well. All right, that's what I have for public comments. And so we got everything from staff. So I guess, up to comments, questions that people have. Rich, looks like you might want to say something.
Yeah, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
I spent the afternoon reading about this. I looked at the Arrowwood redevelopment plan and was looking at the concerns from the people in the Park Ridge. And I think most of their concerns have been addressed. There's not going to be debris. There's not going to be at night. I looked at the original documents, and this is draining exactly where back in 2012 they had planned on it draining. The water problems or issues that I hear everybody mentioning kind of baffle me because I ride my bike, I think, a lot less than I do. But I'm not aware of many problems there, and I went back to that document, and they said there were 3 places within that area that had water problems with ponding. 2 of those were south of PD, and the 3rd one was on SARS, at SARS site. So none of them were anywhere near where this is happening. So I guess, to me, then that negates that concern too. So.
The one question I had, and I don't know if you can answer, is there going to be any crushing at all? Because there's not going to be concrete or anything like that here. Is
There will be no crushing at all. This is just strictly fill, clay, sand, silt loam that will be brought in, compacted in 12-inch lifts. I did want to add, too, that the total for all 3 of those phases is just over 7 acres, and it is not 11.
Okay.
So it is smaller.
Oh, okay. I know that if it's over 5, you have to come
Yep.
here.
Yep.
So, Steven.
Can anyone tell me what is the distance between the closest part of this infill area with the closest residency?
With the nearest portion of the site to the closest resident there on the corner is approximately 600 feet.
I think it's also important to point out that the one stat mentioned, I just want to make sure that we're all correct here, that it's 1 mile from this to Fish Hatchery Road, not 2 or 3, just to point out.
And Sonia mentioned something else I just wanted to follow up on, is that it sounds like this is a site that is slated for development at some point in time. So even though they don't like this, they probably won't like a building going on the site as well, but it is plan for development, it sounds like.
That's correct. The future land use map shows the two different land use designations for this parcel. This northern portion is industrial commercial, and the southern portion is parking conservancy. The southern portion will remain undisturbed. And the redevelopment plan that was referenced goes into a little bit more detail too, sort of just supporting and going into further detail about the warehouse or office uses that could occur on that northern parcel.
Sonia,
Rich, go ahead.
would this need to be rezoned then if it is developed?
Yes, the current zoning, agricultural transition, yep, so it would need to be rezoned, and we would see that application as a plan commission before development would be allowed.
Other questions at all? Ed?
One of the issues was just making sure that there isn't any mud or dirt being deposited on the road. How would that be prevented? I mean, if it's wet,
I might leave that for the contractor to sit and.
Of course you will.
You're here, you might as well come up and,
Both these work?
yeah.
So we have a fairly substantial tracking pad. Where we exit this site is directly onto the project. So we also have a sweeper truck, and we are making rounds constantly between all these jobs, maintaining the road cleanliness. Anytime we have any tracking issues, we either refresh that tracking pad, and we'll have a loader or a skid steer or something scrape any mud or debris off the road. And I don't know, I guess as part of these projects with the DOT, it's pretty, the trucks at some point will track a little bit, but we're always cleaning up after them. We've been doing that on Verona Road for 2 years now, 3 years, so same practices we've been using.
Further questions or comments at all? I think I heard, concerns about debris, but from what I'm hearing, there's not what I would consider debris. It's soil, it's natural pieces. It's not cement, it's not brick, it's not metal or anything like that. So I mean, that's something that I really like to hear. And there's nothing at night. There's no crushing. It's the whole road's an inconvenience, obviously, and we're dealing with. Well, we've been dealing with that for 6-7 years now. Steve?
I just want to make sure that, so the access road is coming off of McKee Road, so it'd be to the west of the Pine Ridge neighborhood, and that is running parallel to the bike path. Is that your access point?
Correct, that blue line right there is the access road back there.
And the tree line has already been cleared for that access?
I believe it's been cleared at least about halfway back. I don't know if there's a little bit more clearing that needs to occur in there, but the contractor will maintain, obviously, the road and the erosion control measures as needed.
And for transparency, I know that they've actually started some work here with a 5-acre or less permit, because they wouldn't have to come here for that, and they need to get started with that. So this is really asking for it to be, sounds like 7, not 11
Yes.
acres now. Yeah, Sonia?
Just on that point too, there were, tree clearing did begin. So even without any fill being brought in, our public works staff noted that the tree clearing itself wouldn't require any permit or review, as long as there were no stump grubbing that would then disturb the soil.
And from what I read, I believe that they are doing better plantings than probably what's there right now, actually, and agreed to kind of do more kind of deep water plantings as well. So that's something that is going to be improvement over what has been there. I mean, the trees we lose, which is unfortunate, but it's not just grass. There's some wildflowers and stuff like that as well.
Do we end up just giving clearance or the grant anything over 5, or do we actually specify up to 11? Because I'm just curious, if we're not going to be using up to 11, should we amend this so that it's actually appropriate for what the future use is?
Sonia?
Generally, you could just make a motion that states approval is recommended as proposed. So if the proposed plans show 7 acres, then 11 acres would not be authorized unless they came back before the Plan Commission with revised plans.
Sounds like maybe you want to make a motion, Stephen. Oh, yeah, Rich.
I'm getting confused again, because it's a 17-acre parcel with, I thought said 11 acres of this part that they were going to do it, and we're actually only using 7 acres of it, is that right?
Correct.
Because 100,000 cubic yards is like 2.7 million cubic feet. That's a lot of dirt.
Yeah. No, the Phase 1, I believe, is just over 100,000 square feet. Phase 2, I think, was 92,000, and then Phase 3 is a little over 100,000. So it was about 315,000 square feet, which was going to give right at the 7.2 acres. We did go up a little bit more in the elevation to allow for that fill to be brought in and not be utilizing more of the square footage of it.
Yeah, because at 11 acres, that would be over 5.5 feet of
Correct.
the entire 11 acres.
Yep.
So,
All right. Anything else, or would someone like to make a motion? Ed?
Yeah, I'll move approval of erosion control and stormwater management permit activity outlot for CSM 15033 with the 7 conditions as noted by staff. I'd like to make one minor modification to number 5 and reword it as no crushing or overnight trucking on the site is allowed, just to clarify that the crushing doesn't occur at any time.
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Rich. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you. All right, next up is the, oh, yeah.
If I can, real quick, just regarding that median that I had discussed with the contractor, we feel that there's a safety issue with PD being, or with the trucks coming in from one way or the other, that it's only a right turn in and a right turn out. That was the Public Works comment. Is there, I guess the request that we would have is that that median be removed, as PD in that area is going to be reconstructed to safely allow trucks to be able to make a left turn out of there with traffic control as traffic prohibits.
The median gets removed as part of the project anyway,
Yeah, I guess
removing additional stuff.
that's more for staff, I guess, to work on and figure that out. That's not something that we can tonight say yes or no to.
Right, and I would have to defer to the Public Works Director on whether that would be appropriate or not.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Nope, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, going on to the CSM for thermal electron scientific instruments. I don't think there's anyone here for this, is there? All right. See, no, thank you. Sonia, do you want to speak to this?
This is a land division request from Thermo Fisher to subdivide one of their existing parcels into 2 lots so that one of the lots can be sold individually. So this is an area just to the west of the property we were just discussing along the Verona Road, Frontage Road. The existing parcel is shown on the map here with the outer boundary. You can see the existing development and buildings on the property. This line here indicates the proposed Lot 1 that would be subdivided. The area is zoned industrial specialized. Staff's identified no concerns with any of the dimensional requirements of the zoning district. This Discovery Path is a private drive, and it provides access to Lot 1. So with the recording of this CSM, those cross-access and shared drive easements would be re-recorded. So no concerns identified from Public Works staff or other departments as well. And the staff recommendation is for approval as noted in the staff report with 7 conditions of approval.
All right. Any questions at all? Comments? Or a motion?
I'll move approval of certified survey map CS 2346-20 with 7 conditions set by staff.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. All right, that one's approved. Next up is conditional use permit for Park Bank. Is there someone here for Park? Are you Park Bank? Okay. Do you want to come up and tell us what's going on here?
material samples for,
Oh, great.
to go along with the architectural review for the.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do everything right away, that's great, and
My name is Brian Reed. I'm with Power Lawson. I'm the, one of the architectural team that's working with Park Bank on the project. So let me set these out for you.
sorry, Zach, you're not going to be able to see it very well. I know this is a project that we've been working with Park Bank on for a while, and so excited to kind of finally see this come forward. It's, you're probably familiar with where it is on Fish Hatchery Road, right as you enter the city. For those who've been around a while, that you might think of the building as Bridgman's. Myself, anyway.
Yes, I was, at the coffee shop, I was disappointed. I was expecting ice cream.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, I'm Brian Reed with Power Lawson. So the desire was for Park Bank then to redevelop their existing site and to make a little bit more prominent building on the site then, given its location in the city and its location as one of the sort of gateways into Fitchburg. They wanted to remove the one-story existing branch bank that they have there and look to make something that's more more prominent as well as more sort of visually accessible from the surrounding streets. Along with that, just to create a better urban condition as well versus what's currently out there. So, do you want me to walk through?
Yeah, why don't you
Presentation?
just do that? Yeah, why don't you do that
Sure.
now? That'd be great.
So the overall site, the existing building sits in the middle of the site, but the desire was then to relocate the new building over to the corner so that it addressed Greenway Cross and Fish Hatchery Road and had more significance than from the intersection itself. The existing drives on the west end of the property are essentially match the existing locations for entry. The one that was just highlighted kind of is slightly reworked to work with the proposed roundabout roadway work there for Greenway Cross. The other entry is essentially matches where the existing entry is now. The parking lot will hold 32 stalls. There are 2 drive lanes dedicated then to Park Bank with ITM equipment associated with those lanes, and then 1 drive-through lane associated with the proposed restaurant use as well. The trash and recycling for the site is the sort of brown enclosure there on the west end of the site. So primary primary entry points to the tenant spaces would be off of the west side of the building, off of the parking, with secondary entries off of a connected sidewalk from Fish Hatchery Road as well. The Park Bank area, I guess, they occupy about 3,500 square feet. The proposed restaurant use is about 2,200 square feet. And then there's a second story tenant space that's about 3,000 square feet. The proposed exterior elevations consist of pallet of materials that are a mixture of a stone masonry, a curtain wall, and storefront. So I guess the image up on the upper left-hand corner, the view from Greenway Cross, kind of shows or demonstrates the concept for Park Bank to be a little bit more transparent and to open up their ability to have more of a connection then to the existing streets, as well as having some visual connectivity to the intersection there, so that visually they have more access, I think, out to the public, and then the public also has more visual access into their facility as well. Because currently the existing building is it's set back quite a ways and has small windows, so it's kind of hard to tell if really any activity is going on there. So that's one of the guiding concepts, and like I said, they wanted to bring it out to make it more prominent for a better condition. Their area is then clad, I guess, primarily with the two-story curtain wall space, stone, and a metal panel, which it would be a stainless steel metal panel or potentially an aluminum, anodized clear aluminum metal panel. There are then accent areas at their entry points and at the ITM, the drive-through canopies, which would also have their matching sort of materials. So there would be a stainless steel panel on one side of those canopy structures, and then more of a painted red metal panel on the other side. There is also sort of accent materials then down along the retail area at the entry points to the proposed restaurant use that are more of the extruded aluminum siding material in this walnut finish to give the palette a little bit more warmer materials down there. This material would also be used in the soffits of those entry canopies as well. So I think that's kind of an overview of the project.
All right, great. Sonia, you want to do staff report?
So we have two different items on the agenda here. The first is the public hearing and consideration of a conditional use permit. The restaurant tenant is a conditional use in the BG zoning district. So that's the first item for the Starbucks tenant. And the second item is the architectural design review for site and structural development. I'm just going to go back to the site plan. Summarized nicely by the applicant. Overall, this is the first site that greets visitors coming into Fitchburg from the city of Madison and from the Beltline. So it's an important site for our overall redevelopment efforts for the Fish Hatchery Road corridor. In general, the redeveloped building reflects our visioning efforts that we've reviewed here as a plan commission a lot better than the existing development. It has the two-story building height, which just better balances out the width of Fish Hatchery Road. It holds the corner with the urban setbacks, and it does a nice job of placing all of the vehicular components behind the building, just like we strive to do in a lot of our smart code developments. So you have all of the parking areas as well as the banking canopies being hidden from the main public view here on Fish Hatchery Road, as well as the Starbucks drive-through. So there's a lot going on in this site to accomplish that. You can see here the property line on the west end goes diagonally across the drive aisle. The parking in this area and the access drive is subject to a cross-access agreement with the Speedway to the south. And the same situation sort of exists over on the east side of the site with ingress and egress into this Speedway site, as well as out of the Starbucks drive-through, is subject to a cross-access easement. So nothing unusual in terms of redevelopment sites. Just wanted to point that out. There were a couple other planning response comments and review comments in the packet, specifically regarding the frontage of the Starbucks tenant suite as it relates to Fish Hatchery Road, and the applicant touched on it a little bit. I think the use of the glass on the overall architectural renderings is really nice. We want to encourage that activity and visibility with our new Fish Hatchery Road and encourage that urban feel. So ideally, with the Starbucks floor plan, we would have had perhaps some seating up in the front that could be visible through glass to the corridor as well. I'm not going to redesign Starbucks floor plan at all, so I'm not aware of what sort of limitations would have led to their site plan as they have it currently. But they do intend to have this door on the sidewalk be public access, which I think is a good component. Right here is a Metro transit stop on Fish Hatchery Road, so that would allow pedestrians to come down the public sidewalk and enter the site. This sidewalk was added for a good pedestrian connection onto the site without having to cross any of these vehicle lanes, and then get up over here to the Starbucks entrance. This is the portion that I was talking about of the Starbucks floor plan that is essentially back of house operations, kitchen or whatever it might be. And they called out on their floor plan that this would be some sort of semi-translucent or opaque glass. A lot of times when you see this type of tenant space, you're looking at maybe shelving units, or you can kind of see that storage happening from the corridor. So we just wanted to make sure that that was addressed, and I feel that it is. Two main issues with the site plan and the recommended approval. There are two places where the setbacks do not comply with the required BG dimensional setbacks, business general zoning. One is in this area on the main building along Greenway Cross, and I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see this little mark noting the 5-foot encroachment. So there is a little bit of the building foundation and this architectural wing that encroaches to the north by 5 feet into the setback. And the other encroachment is over here with one of the ITM canopies for the bank. The Plan Commission does not have authority to grant area variances like this. That needs to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the burden is on the applicant to make sure that they are meeting the criteria necessary to obtain a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So they need to show that the property has a hardship or there are unique limitations. In this case, one of the things identified by the applicant is that additional right-of-way was taken along Greenway Cross, reducing the size of the site overall, making it difficult to have all of these components for a normal redevelopment like this that otherwise meets all of our visioning plans and such. They also need to show that there's no harm to the public interest, so showing that these encroachments don't block vehicular traffic, et cetera. In any case, the staff recommendation is for approval conditioned on the applicant obtaining that variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. That meeting hasn't been scheduled yet due to the COVID issue. It will be scheduled soon with whatever technology and accommodations we need to do, but that's a condition. I mentioned there were two. The second issue is the fact that this parcel currently exists as two separate lots, yet the site was designed as if it were one. They didn't identify the building setbacks in the middle of the lot, for example. So a certified survey map will be required to combine the two lots. The applicant's aware of this, and they've agreed, and we'll be submitting that, I think, for our next Plan Commission meeting. Overall, the approval is for recommendation is for approval. There are 10 conditions noted. It includes the variance, it includes the certified survey map, and the rest of the recommended conditions are fairly standard.
All right. First, I'm going to open the public hearing. I do not see anyone from the public here that wants to speak. So seeing none, I will close the public hearing and now open up to questions, comments, discussion from all of you on the conditional use permit first. We'll do that part first and then ADR after that. Anyone want to speak on this? Lane?
Love it. My daughter about had a fit when she saw there was a Starbucks coming. She got really excited. She's a loyal brand lover. No, I like it. It'd be the second coffee shop over in that area. One of the things that pet peeve is if you're heading south, it's hard to get to the Caribou for a cup of coffee. I drink a lot of coffee on the go, so love it. And being an extension right at the Park Bank Center, I think it's a great idea though. As you were talking, I was kind of thinking, what would it look like? What will it look like when you turn down Greenway and this one is there, then the park banks and right behind, I think it'll look really, really attractive, kind of bringing that whole corner together for the whole thing. Kind of like Zimbrick has on the other side.
Yeah.
Turn the corner in Zimbrick for a long way. It's their corner, all their dealerships, their business. I think this can have the same approach or appeal on the other side. Looking forward to it. Nothing bad to say at all.
Sounds like you're gonna spend a lot of money there, maybe.
If you only knew.
Other comments at all? Steven? Oh, okay. Looks like you're.
What's the timeline? So we gotta knock a building down, basically, right?
Yeah, the intent is to start demolition this summer, assuming approval, then mid to late June or beginning of July to start the demo work and proceed then with construction.
What kind of impact will this have on the Speedway, especially on that east side egress, ingress piece? Will that, as I've been around that Speedway from time to time, people come in all different directions. Is that just because something that's going to be trained behavior after a while, or is there a specific, if you come this way, you must go to the Speedway, go, you know?
Well,
this way?
I think the intent is to, for the most part, maintain the current condition, at least on the west side. On the east side, it would be, instead of being able to, I guess, traverse the parking, the existing parking and come through there, now it would be just the one way for the drive-through. But I guess I'm not sure exactly during construction how access will be allowed or not allowed.
Gotcha. I could see that being I don't want to say a problem, but
Yeah.
a bit of thing, but I think you guys will figure it out.
Yeah, Tom.
Well, my first comment is it's great. It's long overdue. You realize you're taking some history out of Fitchburg because we're losing the ice cream shop. You know that, don't you? Say a couple questions. I don't see it on here, and I think I know the answers, but there's not a connection between this building and the supports building, is there? There's no.
Not a physical connection, no.
There's no connection, no walkway or anything?
No.
Okay. I know you probably brought this up, but I just want to ask you a question about it. It's such a cornerstone to Fitchburg. It's such a entrance to Fitchburg. It's all the above. Was there any discussion about, and maybe this can happen at another time, that's understandable. Is there any discussion about out at the street level, a temperature sign, time of day, something like that? Because,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay,
I mean, I'm not sure if any discussion have gone on with
okay.
any of the Park Bank leadership or anything, but not to my knowledge.
It's just a thought. It's quite the corner, you know. Boy, I think it's great. Even though the president lives in the town of Middleton, there's a lot of talk about this in past years, when to pull the trigger, and I'm glad you pulled it.
Yes, it's a project that's been going on and been
Okay.
studied and looked at for quite a while, yes.
The mayor hasn't got it yet, but some of us have got gray hair over this. So,
There's a few up there. I keep it nice and short on the sides, you can't tell.
Yeah.
Lane?
Is the ITM, the two ITM machines on that west side, they're the only ways to do business with the bank via car? Is there not a drive-up window at all?
There is not.
There's not?
No, just the two ITMs. So the ITMs have like a video component built in, so you can, interact with someone inside essentially as well. But that is it. Otherwise, you'd have to park and go inside and do your banking.
It's becoming more and more popular. I know the Summit Credit Union on Fish Hatchery Road kind of has the same thing in their drive-through
But there's,
screens.
it's still by a window, right?
No, it's a TV screen.
Got a screen.
Yeah.
Magic.
Tellers
So-
are way up here.
yeah.
But it actually is for tellers, it's not like an ATM. You're,
Integrate.
like, the-
Correct. There's a, like I
I've not
said,
heard of ITM until reading this.
It's like an ATM, other than it has an interactive video screen, so it has more functionality for them to be able to do other business with you as well than just a ATM.
So no tubes either?
No. I mean, I believe you can make deposits and such in it, but it's not, not like a pneumatic tube or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I said earlier, I'm excited to finally have this project starting out here, and it's gonna be a great with this and Fish Hatchery Road being redone. It's just a really huge, great transformation of that entrance to our city.
Well, that point, that looks so cool coming out. Point and glass, I mean,
It's a striking design if
Yeah.
that was your work, Brian.
Yeah. Well, I was involved, so thank you.
Other
Are we,
questions or
I was
comments?
gonna ask,
Yeah.
are we talking just about conditional use, or are we also looking at,
We'll do the conditional use first, and then we can do design next. Yeah.
I move to approve conditional use permit CU 2342-20 with no conditions.
second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Now, the ADR for the same project. Is there anything you want to add at all, Brian? I can't
don't-
imagine there
think
is.
so.
Okay. Any comments on design at all? Steven?
I've got something. So Sonia did touch on this, and that was the first thing that I noticed from your elevations as well, is that the back side of Starbucks is facing out to Fish Hatchery, and not even, I can picture it. It's back of house, like you were saying. It's probably gonna be a white wall with glass put in front of it and an entryway. And that has me a little concerned. We've talked about that with the, further down on Fish Hatch and not having actual doorways into, so I do appreciate that at least there's a doorway there, but that also kind of concerned me, I would say. That the bank has this amazing presence on both sides of the building, and then Starbucks, you're looking at back of house Fish Hatch. So I don't know if anyone else has any concerns with that.
I see your point, I just don't know. It's basically a triangle. You want the prominent part of the triangle to be Greenway Cross and Fish Hatch. You can't give Starbucks the prominent part of the triangle, so they get one of two sides.
No, but I'm saying that the business side of Starbucks is facing Speedway and Greenway Cross.
I see exactly what you're saying, but with the drive-through, I don't know what, and
Oh, I see, yeah.
that little sidewalk, I don't know what else. And we already talked about the egress and ingress from
Right.
Speedway. I just don't know.
If I
what
could
else
design
to
it
do.
better, I would be a designer. I'm here to be a politician and complain when I get to complain. So here I am. I'm just
We're not
offering that
political.
up.
No, I get it. No, I totally get
I don't know
what
if
you're
there's anything that can be done, but I
Right.
do see that as a concern.
Sonia, can you show the site plan again? I just wondered if there could be a more direct sidewalk access more toward the corner, because you have to, from that bus stop, you have to walk kind of all the way around. There's no direct route.
Correct. There is a change of elevation, and so a direct route would potentially be a challenge. Right now, the building does sit, first floor of the building is about 3 feet above the sidewalk along Fish Hatchery. So as you kind of come around the corner and start heading up Greenway Cross, or as you come into the site and start heading up the other way, you're traversing that grade. So a direct connection would be, we'd have to have a ramp, and right now, the way the site was designed was just to take into account the existing topography, because right now the site drains from the west to the east, so that's why we had placed the stormwater retention areas along the eastern edge of the site. So that would also be a challenge in reducing that footprint.
And I think there's requirements for infiltration. I think that's kind of where you wedged it in, where there was room. Any other concerns or comments? I think with redevelopment, it's always a little more of a challenge because there's a lot of unique things associated with it. All right. Seeing nothing else, does someone want to do a motion?
Make a motion to approve architectural design review for 2802 Fish Hatchery Road.
I'll second.
All right.
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next is Hospice. I don't think anyone's here for that one either. So do you want to speak to this, Sonia? I know we've talked about this once before.
Sure. Item E and item F on the agenda are related. First is the public hearing consideration of rezone for Egress Hospice. This is to rezone to PDD SIP, Plan Development District Specific Implementation Plan. It actually already did have the SIP zoning in place, but as you may recall, we had to go back through this PDD zoning process and amend the GIP at our recent meeting because it limited the number of parking stalls to 270. So we already amended the GIP. Now we're looking at the SIP. It's the exact same project. It's consistent. It would allow for the addition of 11 parking stalls as well as driveway access onto the new Fihi Glen at Egress Hospice. So that's the purpose of the SIP rezone, and the ADR would allow the exact same thing.
All right, first I will open the public hearing. I do not see anyone that would like to speak for the public hearing. So seeing nothing, I will close the public hearing and open up to comments, questions on the rezone request. We talked about it last month, so there might not be much. Anything?
Parking.
Right, a few more parking spots where they're getting a new entrance. They're making good progress on that extension of Fihi. They were pouring curb and sidewalk today.
I saw that.
Looking like no one wants to say anything. Does someone want to do a motion then?
Yeah.
For the PDD zoning or whatever was there, it's RZ 2341-20. I'll move approval
With
4 conditions.
the 4 conditions.
with the conditions from staff.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ed. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right. That is approved. What about the ADR component? Any thoughts, comments on the ADR component to it, the design? I didn't think so.
Make a motion to approve architectural design review for 5395 East Shore Parkway with the 4 conditions as stated by staff.
Second.
All right. That's seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that is also approved. Excellent. All right, down to G, rezone request. I don't see Sean here. Do you want to speak to this, Sonia?
This is a rezone request for a property on Index Road to the east of the Fish Hatchery Road corridor. And we talked about this a little bit with our recent update to the comprehensive plan. The future land use designation for this parcel was changed from industrial to business in order to allow this rezoning application to come forward. The request is to rezone to business general to allow for an educational services use. This would be for Milestone Democratic, which is a proposed charter school. Detailed further in the application, no concerns identified by any departments, and the staff recommendation is for approval with no conditions. There would be no exterior site or building improvements included in this proposal. It's simply the rezone to allow the educational services as a permitted use.
All right. I will open the public hearing first. And no one is here from the public. So seeing no one here from the public, I will close the public hearing and open up to comments, discussion on this piece. Ed?
Where's the parking for this?
Right. Looks like parking is behind the building.
So that's going to be pretty limited for an educational use. I mean, how are they going to manage it? I think it's the same building my daughter had music lessons.
Okay.
And there was never any parking. You'd go in, you pick up the kids and drop them off. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine how they would operate. The teachers have to have a place to park, and parents that are picking up or dropping off kids or any kids that are driving. And there's some street parking, but there's usually a number of cars out there as it is. So I'm just wondering how they're expect to manage this?
In the staff memo, there's an aerial image of the site as well, and the property behind this one is owned by the same property owner as well as the building to the north. I definitely can't speak to any details, whether there are any shared parking arrangements or anything for those uses, but at least point that out, that other parking lots exist in the area, but of course, not speaking to any arrangements.
Other
I got a question.
thoughts? Yeah, Rich, go ahead.
Is signage considered exterior building improvements or anything?
That would go through the normal process to get a sign permit approved from city staff. It's
So
an
that's
administrative
outside of
approval.
this.
Mhm.
Other questions or comments? Hopefully it's successful. I know I jumped on a Zoom call yesterday that they had for the community. There really wasn't anyone else. I think they had one person. Friday they did one too that I logged on, but no concerns or anything like that at this point. I know they're excited about this site just because it's close to some areas that they're going to try and draw kids out of and try and give them a better chance for success. All right, seeing no other comments, someone want to do a motion then?
I move to approve rezone request RZ 2343-20 with no conditions.
Second.
All right, signed by Lane. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. All right, next up is certified survey map. We got Jason here. Do you want to come up and speak to this for us, Jason? Yeah. That's fine.
Okay, Jason Geiger. Here for this property. So yeah, I mean, this is a, 1.8 acre infill site. Obviously, it's got a house on it, been there for a long time, fairly wooded parcel. We're simply kind of, not asking for a rezone, change of use or anything, but just creating 3 additional lots, which kind of seemed like a natural, I guess, fit for maybe what the city had intended, since it's already roughed in for, there's water and sewer to all 3 lots. It fits the current neighborhood, consistent with the neighborhood. And I thought this would be the best use for this property. Yeah, I mean, so it's just kind of what I thought would be a good fit here. I know that in discussion with communication, I think that the big challenge I want to talk about tonight is sidewalks, and that's why I dropped that photo off. It's my understanding that Public Works would like to have a sidewalk on Oak Knoll and Lacey Road. I understand connecting the sidewalk to the existing sidewalk on Oak Knoll and extending that. But where I guess run into a little bit of an issue is that, to put a sidewalk in on Lacey Road is very, very, very costly. And actually, to back up a little bit, to put a sidewalk in, my initial thought was if you extended the sidewalk to the rear of Lot 2, stopping it there would make the most sense. That's my initial thought. And the reason being is that if you go any farther, you're taking down, there's some 60 to 75-foot mature pines that would have to come down. There's major construction to take it to the corner and wrap it around Lacey Road. There's probably about 17 trees that get removed. The elevation on Lacey Road is 5 feet high, about 5 feet higher than to the east. So, I mean, you have to rip out a lot of dirt, you have to build a retaining wall. I mean, it's a very, very expensive. And, you know, if you intend to put sidewalks in the next couple of years along Lacey Road, I see the need to do that now. But if this is something that, I guess, you know, to spend this kind of money to put a sidewalk in that leads to nowhere is where my concern comes in. You know, because there's 860 feet more sidewalk that needs to get installed on Lacey Road. And there's nowhere to go. So I wanted to just bring that to your attention and open up for discussion.
All right. Anything else before we go to staff report?
I don't think so.
All right. Why don't you do staff report first, Sonia?
This is a land division request. It's a larger existing single-family parcel at the corner of Lacey Road and Oak Knoll Drive. The existing home is shown there on proposed Lot 2, and then there would be 3 proposed new lots, 1 with frontage on Lacey Road and 2 with frontage on Oak Knoll. The land use plan identifies this as low-density residential. The existing zoning is also appropriate with the RL zoning. It meets all the requirements. We have a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, all of the setbacks, et cetera. There are a couple of areas where I'll point out that notes are included regarding existing building setbacks. Regarding the sidewalk, planning staff and public works staff would not be favorable to any sort of variance with regard to the public improvements. Our land division request is our mechanism, or the application is our mechanism to complete pedestrian networks and that sidewalk connection and get that public improvement extended all the way to the Plat line. So sidewalk would be required on Lacey Road along the entire frontage and along Oak Knoll Drive. And that would be detailed further in the subdivision improvement agreement. So that is a document that Public Works drafts and reviews with the applicant, and then it would be approved by the Board of Public Works as well as the Common Council. So the details of those documents we never see here at Plan Commission, but Public Works would put that together in more detail. It's something that when we've had inquiries about this lot in the past as well, we've notified every potential applicant that those public improvements would be required. I'll just walk through the recommended approval. There are 14 conditions. Number 1 is our standard, no other approval is waived or deemed satisfied except for the approval provided herein. Council approval of the CSM is required. Erosion control and stormwater management permits if land disturbance exceeds 4,000 square feet is required. Number 4, if there are any private on-site stormwater maintenance facilities, we would require a recorded stormwater maintenance agreement for those facilities. Number 5, concurrence would be required from the utilities, gas, electric, cable, and phone. With regard to the utility easement locations shown on the CSM, we want to make sure that those are sufficient and meet their needs. Number 6, this is regarding the existing building setbacks. There is a shed that straddles the proposed lot line between lot 1 and 2. It does not meet the required setback since it's crossing over that line. So we want to make sure that there's a note added that says upon removal or redevelopment, any new development would need to comply with the setbacks that are in place. Number 7, applicant should provide gas, electric, telephone, and cable utilities the preliminary plans so that they can review the utility easements. Number 8, we want to make sure that all the area of the easements as well as the required right-of-way dedication are shown on the CSM. Public Works did have a comment that it's possible permanent easements would be required in order to accommodate the sidewalk that would be constructed. Those aren't shown on there now. If that is the case, I added in here that if additional right-of-way or permanent easement is required to allow the sidewalk improvements, that any minor modifications can be approved by the Public Works Director and City Planner without requiring reapproval through Plan Commission and the City Council. Number 9, the developer will need to coordinate with the U.S. Postal Service for mail delivery, and they may require some sort of centralized mode of delivery rather than individual boxes for each lot. Number 10, outstanding MMSD fees shall be paid prior to city signing of the CSM. Park improvement fees are required, so the fee in lieu of land dedication per new residential dwelling is $4,330 for a single-family home. And then we also have the park improvement fee, which is $670 per residential unit. So those would need to be paid prior to issuance of any building permit. Number 12, the applicant shall obtain a driveway permit for each proposed driveway. That includes the one on Lot 1 from Lacey Road. Public Works didn't have any concerns there. Each lot shall pay water impact fees. And then finally is that subdivision improvement agreement. We require an executed and recorded SIA. It's required prior to city signing of the CSM and also prior to release of building permits. The subdivision improvement agreement will require sidewalk along Lacey and Openal to the Plat lines.
All right, thank you. All right, open up for questions, comments. I guess just one, I'm just thinking of Lacey Road right now, and I don't know if Sonia or JC know this. If I remember correctly, from Oak Knoll, that intersection to the east, there's already sidewalk all the way to Fish Hatchery Road, up to Tom McCoy, and beyond from there. From the west, there's nothing until that block, essentially. Once you hit Richardson, then there's sidewalk the rest of the way west until it's Lacey's farm.
Right.
So this is the one block kind of missing, and so this is a piece of that block, I guess.
Well, this block is missing, and to the east, the house on the corner has sidewalk. The house next to that does not have sidewalk. And then the house next to that has sidewalk going all the way.
So
So there's one house that doesn't have sidewalk, and then if you drive by and look at it, they have like black rubber mats or something down instead. I don't know what's going on there, but
Weird. Okay.
anyway.
All right. All right. Comments at all up here? Or Zach's? I don't want to forget you, Zach, even though you're online. Steven?
I guess I do have to kind of question similar to the applicant. So we would have the sidewalk going up Oaknall for 2 properties and then just end, and then you've got 4, 5, 6 properties before you get to Richardson. So it's just a sidewalk around the corner and ending.
Yeah. If we do it other places, even up here next to City Hall, it goes to city property and then it kind of stops. I think at one point they thought it would go down Lacey and it didn't over here on this part, but
I mean, I
see it.
I can see, connecting to the sidewalk, going to Lacey. I'd have to remove about 5 huge pine trees. It can be done, but I can see that. But putting sidewalk in on Lacey, that's gonna, I mean, I guess, is there any time frame to get the rest of it done? I mean, it could be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I mean, you don't want people crossing on Lacey Road, so you really don't want them using the sidewalk. So that's the kind of my, I guess, thought process behind all that is, I mean,
I think that's the challenge. Is that
nobody here would spend the money to put sidewalk in if it's not connecting to, I know it's a requirement, and that's what Public Works want, but nobody here would ever spend that kind of money to do it. And again, that elevation is like 5 feet high. So you gotta put in a rock wall, and I don't know what kind of requirements the Public Works has on that, but, when I drove down, I was driving around today looking for other sidewalks that had a rock wall, and the first one I found was on Fitchburg down here. It's all rock retaining wall past the old bank or whatever, on the corner. I don't know, wasn't too pretty. I don't think you want those kind of rock wall like that there. If anything, you'd probably want something a little more decorative, stacked a little bit nicer. And I don't know, I just think that if you're gonna put sidewalk in, because none of those houses on Lacey Road are being torn down. Nobody's rebuilding there. Nothing's gonna happen with those. So I think that the only way you're gonna get sidewalk in on Lacey Road there is you assess people, proportionally, and you just get it done. And I think that would be the time to put that in. It would make the most sense to me, I think. That's just my thought.
Ed?
I agree with Jason on this, and I'm wondering if there's a way to get this done. Would it be possible to place a deed restriction on lots 1 and 2 that the owners of those properties waive any right to contest assessment for sidewalk installation in the future?
Yes, I think that's something that would be an example of a way to do it. I don't want to speak for Public Works and say that they would accept that, but it would be something that, since they did let us know that they're not in favor of waiving the requirement at this time, but something like that could be discussed further with the applicant as they are developing that subdivision improvement agreement and when it's presented to the Board of Public Works and City Council.
That way, at some point in the future, if the sidewalk is actually being built and is connecting to somewhere, it'll all be the same, it'll be uniform, it'll be the same age. Otherwise, you're putting in a sidewalk that's, it's going to deteriorate over a period of time, even though it's really not even being used and it has to be maintained.
Well,
Doesn't seem to be a lot of point.
right. And by the time you put that sidewalk in, you may have to redo the sidewalk. These retaining walls don't last forever, and I just think you really don't want anybody using it, crossing Lacey Road. It just doesn't make sense, but yeah.
This is an interesting discussion, really, and just a little bit of the history from my other members to give you an idea. What happened here was when the school was put on Lacey Road, you came out of Richardson and you went to the west, and all the neighbors screamed about a sidewalk going to the school. So that's why when you're on if you know where I'm going, if you go west on Lacey, turn left onto Richardson, go and look up to the west, you'll see sidewalks. And that was because of the school, okay? And the people to the east, at the time we put the sidewalks in up there, there wasn't a push for sidewalk on Lacey Road. There just wasn't a push. And when the Bach property, this gentleman had, I know since passed away, but when that was in, and you look at this map, this picture he brought, this Oak Knoll or whatever, a few years ago, we put the road in there, and the sidewalk stopped because we didn't need it. There was no need for it. Now there's a need, what Ed brought up, to continue it on to Fish Hatchery Road. I think we should. I think I'm for it. But if you come out of Oak Knoll and you go west, there's no sidewalks. On Lacey Road, on the, I'll get this right, south side of the road, there's no sidewalks. And there's no reason to put a sidewalk there. I don't want to say I'm the sidewalk king, even though I kind of am, when it came to sidewalks in Wildwood South. But the fact is if there's something we could do, Sonia, even to flag it, that when sidewalks are put in, it goes the whole width of the block all the way down. It certainly makes sense. But to put a sidewalk in, I'll give you another one that it got by me. I wasn't on the council at the time. We have a sidewalk on the fire station on the east side that goes in front of the building. It stops at Clayton. It goes nowhere. It stops. I wasn't around then. But you go on that side, you just stop. It goes nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, now go on the street, folks, and walk. Mm-hmm. But it just doesn't make sense at this point in time to put the sidewalk on Lacey Road unless the other residents are in agreement or we talk to them or whatever. And if we have to, I'm going to use what Ed said, note it some way, no problem. But then you have to conclude the other folks, the other people along the line. It wouldn't be fair to tax these partials and not the other, and then the sidewalk stops. So I'm not for it at all on Lacey Road. That's all I'm saying. That's all.
Just procedurally, to clarify, it's not something that the Plan Commission really has the authority to waive at this time. So if we were approving it tonight, we would need to approve it subject to a subdivision improvement agreement, and we could leave it generally stated as such, and that would be subject to whatever the Public Works Department, Board of Public Works, and City Council approves.
Yeah, because I think it's important, whether or not it goes in right now, this is our chance to make that requirement that it will go in at some point and have that known, I feel bad for the person who has to pay for it in the future instead of the person who's paying for it now. There's a reason you do it now, and that's because, developers don't want to pay for it, which I get, it's expensive. But I think, whether or not we put it in now, that requirement has to be that it will be in at some point. I mean, this is one of the few pieces that we need to finish connecting there.
Wasn't that always a piece on Arnold's platform that when people complain about sidewalks, he promised that when there was improvement and the opportunity was there to add the sidewalk, they would then
We
add
want to
that.
add sidewalk to every neighborhood that doesn't have them.
Yeah, in lieu of adding it all the time. I'm assuming this would fall in that realm. I'm with Ed and Tom, if there's no need for it now, we need to spend the money, but if you can earmark it somehow. I'm for sidewalks, but I'd rather keep the trees. And the elevation's goofy, it doesn't make sense. I really don't like rock walls at all, in a neighborhood especially.
Steven?
Procedurally, so what do we do if we go down this path, but Public Works doesn't agree? How do we handle this, I guess? It sounds like we're kind of marching towards agreement, but this wasn't coming from us or from staff, it's coming from Public Works, so how do we handle this?
I think Jason would have a bigger fight, right?
Well, I think Sonny, you can speak to this, I guess, but I think if Public Works says no, then sorry. But
Right, yep. The Plan Commission can't agree to waive it or to any other condition other than to say that the subdivision improvement agreement is required. So if you wanted to modify the recommended conditions of approval, you'd be looking at condition number 14, and perhaps you would just eliminate the second sentence, which reads the SIA will require sidewalk along Lacey and Openal to the plat lines. And we can have the minutes reflect the Plan Commission's feedback. If this is consensus, we can share that with the Board of Public Works and add that to the referral form. That what I'm hearing is the Plan Commission's favorable to requiring the Oak Knoll leg of the sidewalk, but arranging some sort of deferred assessment or deferred installation of the Lacey segment.
Yeah, I think you want something in the deed restrictions, so anyone who buys those lots is aware when they purchase the lots that they're on notice that they do not have the right to contest an assessment for sidewalk purposes when the time comes that the city wants to build it. And if you don't get that in the deed restrictions, then you don't really have much.
Well, I do have one more question I wanted to bring up. Is I know that the side setback for off Oak Knoll didn't meet the requirement.
Yes.
What about the rear setback? Because I didn't think that met it either. I meant to ask you about that.
Sure. Let me see here. The rear setback's closest portion is 22 feet, looks like.
To the deck, yep.
The required rear setback is, actually, the rear setback is 47 feet. So you do meet the required there. The required rear setback is 35.
It's 35? Mm-hmm. From the,
And I have 47 here, 47.3 to the west lot line.
oh, you're looking at it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it.
Why would that 22 feet from the deck not be the rear setback?
Be a side yard lot line.
is there a way that you
three.
determine what's the front and what's the side?
Yeah, it's defined in the zoning code. We can add a general condition, since you do have three, two for sure, one potential non-conforming setback with the existing structure. You already have a note added regarding the side street setback, and I requested an additional note regarding the shed. We could just make that a general note on the CSM that any new development must comply with zoning standards in place, and that this wouldn't authorize a perpetual variance.
Sure, okay.
So if the Plan Commission wants to make that modification, I would suggest changing condition number 6.
Want to give us some wording for that, Sonia?
Sure. So let me see here. I think there is a note here that reads already on the proposed CSM, the structure on Lot 2 does not meet minimum street side setback. Any alteration, addition, or new construction shall comply with the established setback requirements in effect. So we could modify that note to read, the structure on Lot 2 does not meet required RL zoning setbacks. Any alteration, addition, or new construction shall comply with the established setback requirements in effect, eliminating the specificity about minimum street side setback.
Anything else, or does someone want to do a motion with those two edits?
Sure, I'll move approval of CS 2345-20 with the 14 conditions, condition number 6 modified, per Sonia's recommended wording, and number 14 to eliminate the second sentence.
Second.
All right, seconded by Tom. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, we can go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. That's just,
Thank you.
all right, moving along to I. Looks like there's no one here for that. Do you want to speak to this, Sonia?
Sure. Once again, I will just bring up the site plan here. This is a final plat amendment in the Terra Vesa plat, and it's regarding one specific block along Frise Drive. This is a final plat amendment that is essentially a lot line adjustment between 8 lots. There are an existing, on the final plat, 8 lots already, so it's not creating or subtracting any lots. It's just adjusting the width between the lot lines. I noted in the staff report, basically, lots 1 and 8 get a little bit wider, from 27 feet to 31 feet. And the interior 6 lots go from 24 to 23. And this lot line adjustment is being made to align with the common walls in a proposed townhome development that Encore is bringing forward. So this meets all of the smart code requirements, no other concerns identified by staff. The recommendation is for approval with 8 conditions, and they are all fairly standard conditions. I'll point out that condition number 6 requires that the applicant obtain Smart Code Article 5 plan approval, which is an administrative approval prior to issuance of any permits. That again is the Article 5 plan is the specific site plan that shows the buildings and its setbacks and lot coverage and all of those things. So they need to meet those requirements and have it approved by staff prior to issuance of permits. Condition number 7 is regarding the public improvements for the Terra Vesa plat. All of the sidewalk is not installed, although it is in progress. That needs to still be accepted by the city council. So this would require the subdivider to agree by written affidavit that occupancy shall not occur, nor shall occupancy permits be issued prior to completion, inspection, and acceptance of all required public improvements for the Terra Vesa plat. And then finally, condition number 8, utility lines and laterals, I believe, were already laid to each of the existing 8 lots, and Public Works will require that each of those laterals serve the lot. So with the lot line modifications, it's possible that they no longer align exactly with each lot. So this specifies that if modifications to existing laterals are required, the work shall be done at the developer's expense and shall comply with the City of Fitchburg specifications, such as abandonment of the existing laterals at the main in the street.
And I just drove through here, and they were working hard on sidewalks today, so they're, hopefully will be in soon. There's a lot of sidewalk they got to put in, but they're working hard on those right now. And there's just, FYI, not really relevant, there's at least 23 homes being built out there right now. Some very close to done, some a hole in the ground. Ed?
I think this is a great idea. This is exactly the type of thing that we need to get affordable owner-occupied housing. I mean, this is really how you accomplish it. So 100% in favor of this.
Tim?
Aren't these two homes where the garage is in the rear?
Yes, this would be alley loaded, so
Am I
on,
thinking right?
yep, on Frisee, it would be,
Yep.
you know, front of the house, and on the east side would be alley loaded.
Is that the term you use?
When it comes to maintaining those,
Carriage
I know that's right over here in Sain Road, I get it. You know, they're around. When it comes to maintaining those roads, and whose responsibility is that?
Those are private alleys,
Those are
subject to
private.
private maintenance agreements.
It's totally private as far as,
Anything
know
else? Oh, yeah, Tim.
got me thinking on your comment. Do we know the price range of these homes? No?
I don't,
Eh. No,
no,
that's for another day.
yeah. Depends on what the pandemic does to the prices.
I'm picturing this, I actually, my first bought in Fitchburg at Hatchery Hill townhouses. This is what I'm picturing, similar kind of 2-3 story probably,
Probably,
garages underneath on the backside,
The
right?
backside, yeah.
could be, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not,
Then for the cost, I can tell you that those have gone about 50% up in the last 6 years since I sold it, so cost is, who knows what.
Oops, should have rented it for a few years.
I should have.
All right, not talking about financial advice.
Gotcha.
Any last comments at all?
Is because the other advantage to these is you don't need a condo association with a zero lot line. You each have your own piece of real estate, so you're still gonna have some sort of a you're gonna have some sort of an association to maintain the exteriors, obviously.
Right.
But you don't have to do the condo association route, which is good too. It makes these easier to finance as well.
Yeah, maintenance agreement is much simpler than a full association to deal with.
Yep.
I move to approve final plat amendment 2344-20 with the 8 conditions as stated by staff.
I'll second.
All right, stated by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Next up, do you want to talk about this one, Sonia?
so the last 3 items are Public Works resolutions. Item J, Resolution R-74-20, would approve a temporary easement for access and construction during the Burn Pond retrofit project. I believe there's an exhibit here in the packet. So, wish I could figure out how to get the aerial map up to show more context. But this would be west of Fish Hatchery Road, South Fish Hatchery Road in the, I believe it's called the Burnwood subdivision, across from the parcels where J.T. Klein was proposing the multifamily project. So Burn Park is down in this area. And in order to access the retrofit project, this area identified in the thicker bold line would need to be granted to allow for construction staging. So the property owner is agreeing to allow the city to have that temporary easement for access and construction. And approval is recommended.
All right, sounds like a good thing, and nice of them to give us that access. Questions at all?
Move approval of resolution R-74-20.
Second.
Second by Lane. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Okay, what's this one?
The next item is Resolution R-66-20. This would approve the 4th Amendment to the Subdivision Improvement Agreement in the Plat of 9 Springs. And this is specifically regarding the 10-foot recreational trail that had been required of the subdivider, which is Avante, to be installed within 60 months of the first recording, or 5 years of the First Amendment. That would have brought them to spring 2020. The subdivider has requested an extension about a half a year up to September 15th, 2020. rather than the spring to construct that path. The reason for this is so that they construct the path at the same time between East Shiro Parkway and the new Central Park Place extension. Public Works staff notes that they're agreeable to this as it would be more equitable for the subdivider and more efficient for all to complete the projects together.
Any questions or comments? Or a motion?
I move to approve resolution R66-20.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. And last one. Talked about this already, I think. I've talked about it, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we have tonight before us a resolution that would grant a permanent easement for a public path and lighting on the Nine Springs Golf Course along Fish Hatchery Road. So we've talked about this in various ways with the deed restriction that was released recently, as well as the Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction plans. This would formally grant an easement in the area shown on the screen in red as permanent easement to allow that path on the golf course park property.
So it's just right on the edge along Fish Hatchery Road. It's not like it's through the middle of the park or anything like that, but trying to make that a nicer area.
I move to approve resolution R48-20.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Report from staff.
Our next meeting is May 19th. I haven't had a chance to review the applications yet that have been submitted, so I can't comment on how long that agenda might be or what's coming up. I'd also like to note that we're putting the final touches still on the new comprehensive plan, and the website will be updated soon in case any of you or anyone in the public has been looking for that final document. It will be available soon. And as soon as that's ready, we're also going to put out our call for the 2020 minor comp plan amendments for specific parcel land use changes. And again, that's something that can only be proposed by the mayor or 3 alders. So look for that in the future as well.
Thank you. And, next meeting, I don't know if we'll still be under this coronavirus cloud that we are in, but you're always welcome to be online like Zach is. Don't feel like you have to be here, but feel free to go. I don't have any announcements, and so if someone wants to make a motion to adjourn, we can do that.
So motion adjourned.
Second.
All right, moved by Tom, seconded by Ed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, we are adjourned. See you later, Zach.